Guys, it's Mrs. Wilson. Today we're going to be talking about text structures. I know that you have familiarity with text structures from previous grades like problem and solution, compare and contrast. So we're just going to review. I want you to make sure you start and stop and take notes in between for your homework. Let's get going. So what I want you to remember is that when authors are creating informational text, they decide how they're going to structure their writing. They might begin by describing a problem in our society, and then as they go through after the description, then they might go into more of the problems and how to solve those problems. So just like an architect would design a building for a specific purpose, authors will do the same. So they pick a text structure or multiple text structures as they get started. So writers use text structures to organize their writing. Each structure communicates the author's ideas, but in different ways. And what's really important to realize is that writers can use a variety of text structures just in one passage. So one heading might be one type of text structure, and then another section of the passage might be a completely different type of text structure, and that's okay. So it's not going to be the entire passage being one text structure. The text structures we're going to talk about today are going to be sequential order, problem and solution, compare and contrast, logical order, chronological order, cause and effect, description, and order of importance. So in sequential order, we're going to have specific transition words like first, next, then, finally. And this text structure is used to list items or to list events and steps, or to give a specific sequence of how something is done. So it may describe how to do something, how to make something, how to put together something. So we get sequential order a lot when we're talking about a how-to type of passage. And here's an example. So why don't you pause, read the passage. You can see that highlighted are these transition words. And just a reminder, you will often see sequential order in directions, how to, an instruction manual, how to do something. Chronological order, as you can see from a timeline, is where we're going over events in history, a historical figure, and this text structure is going to be used to list items or events in the order in which they happened over a period of time. And so in this example, the steamboat is debuting in Nashville in 1819. And it goes all the way through. There's something with Andrew Jackson in 1828 and so on, all the way to 1854. So there's a chronological sequence to it. Why don't you pause, read through this passage, pay attention to the dates that are being used. You're going to see a lot of dates when we're using chronological order because events are organized over a period of time. The next text structure we're going to talk about is problem and solution. So this text structure is used to explain a problem and then show one or more solutions. So take a moment, read through this. But what is important to realize, so write this down for me, please. You can have one problem with several solutions. Think of pollution. We can think of a lot of ways to reduce pollution in our area, and that's okay. So it's not going to be a one-to-one ratio. We could have one problem with many solutions. And here you can see in yellow, we've got examples of problems, and in green, we've got examples of the solutions. So go ahead and pause and read through this. The next text structure is cause and effect, and just like problem solution, this text structure is used to explain what happens, but you're going to see that there's not going to be a solution for it necessarily. And a solution could exist, but that's not what the author is writing about. The author is writing about a problem or explaining what happens and why it happens. So let's take a look. Now you can see in yellow the different causes, and in green the different effects that happen from that cause. What is very confusing for students is they get problem solution confused with cause and effect, because a cause sounds very much like a problem, but you have to be a detective and see, am I really seeing just the effects or the results, or am I really seeing solutions being offered to the problem? Go ahead and pause and read through this example. Next, we're moving on to compare and contrast. And very much like a Venn diagram, this is going to be talking about how things are similar, how they are different. And if I go to the next slide, you can see here we're using different signal words or transition words. We're talking about how they are alike in yellow and how they're different in green. Why don't you take a moment, pause, and read through this example. Description is going to be our next text structure. This text structure is used to describe maybe a location, an idea, an event, but there's going to be a lot of vocabulary of descriptive words. We're going to see a lot of characteristics and features and examples, a lot of adjectives. I'm going to be describing, and I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide, where you can see we start off with a main idea, and then everything else is further developing that main idea. These supporting details are describing what's happening, what would we see, what does it look like, what does it feel like. So again, a lot of descriptions describing and educating or telling, informing the reader. So why don't you pause and look through this one. And then logical order can sometimes be confusing because it sounds so much like sequential order or chronological order. But this text structure, it requires a logical order of information to be shared, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in sequential or time order. But what it is that things need to happen in a logical order for something to happen. So why don't you pause, read through this example. I will say logical order is not very prominent as far as what we read in texts. So it's rarer, but it's still a text structure. So pause and read through this example. Then we might move on to the order of importance text structure. This text structure is used to order information from what could be starting with the least important, leading up to what is the most important, or reverse. It could be starting off with this is the most important and goes all the way down to the least important example. So this could be an example of why should people recycle? Well, the most important reason we might recycle would be, and they would go on to explain. And then there would be other sections that would follow that would take you down to the least important reason to recycle. So why don't you pause and read through this example, please. So guys, that's where we're going to end off today. There are a variety of different text structures that authors will use. It is a way to organize their thoughts so they can present information to the readers where it makes sense and is logical. It will also could be multiple text structures in one passage, so remember that, and we'll go through some examples together in class. All right, write down any questions you have. Maybe come up with some of your own examples for each type of text structure, and I look forward to seeing your notes so we can discuss. Good job.